how long have we, as a country, known about pH?
There's a number of answers to that, but as a disease that we can actually effectively treat, 15 to 20 years.
So who's responsible for letting us know that it existed in its present form?
Well, I suppose the best answer to that is 15 years ago, in 2011 now, 15 years ago, a guy called Tim Higginbottom, who was a doctor at Patworth, was the very first person who successfully treated this condition. So 15 years ago, probably the best thing to say is Tim Higginbottom at Patworth.
So when you go back 15 years and now you're here, have things changed?
Dramatically, much improved. Many treatments are available. 15 years ago, one treatment which was really being tested to, at present, 5 or 6 very effective licensed treatments available.
So what would happen if someone was diagnosed with pH and they didn't get treated?
Well, the outlook, it still remains quite bleak for those individuals. One who don't get diagnosed or get diagnosed and don't respond to treatment. And the average survival time, if survival is a good measure, is about 2.5 years, which is really quite dramatic.
So that makes it as powerful a disease, if you can use the word, or as sad a disease as cancer.
It has an outcome worse than most types of cancer, unsuccessfully treated. Successfully treated, very different picture.
So why is it then that, by and large, we as a general population don't know much about pH?
A few things. One, it's still 20 years, 15, 20 years in medicine's a short period of time. It's very rare, and very rare diseases don't get into the public eye very much.
I've heard tell that there are even doctors who don't really know much about it.
There is. I mean, it's one of those conditions that people will have heard of in their medical training as a rare condition, but actually managing a patient, coming into contact daily with people with pulmonary hypertension is very rare indeed.
And how many people in the United Kingdom would say they suffer from pH?
We know from some of the work that's being done at the moment, and we have a national database now which is evolving, it's only a few years old, there's around about 5,000–6,000 people with the condition that are diagnosed. Varying estimates of those who are undiagnosed, but that could be another 2,000 to 3,000.
So if you had to give me a 1 or 2 sentence definition of pH, what would that definition be?
It's a condition of the lungs. It affects the blood vessels of the lungs, and it is the effect from the lungs to the heart that cause the problems. It puts the heart under huge amounts of strain.
And in all cases, is it terminal?
No, it's not terminal. I think the best way to describe it, rather than use the word terminal, which is very dramatic, it is potentially life-shortening and life-threatening. So
is there such a thing then as a case when you can say to someone, you were diagnosed as having pH, you are now cured?
There's one type of pulmonary hypertension in which that's the case. It's a rare form of pulmonary hypertension which is due to blood clots in the lungs. You can potentially cure an individual, but as a general comment, pH is not a curable disease, but it's a manageable disease. There are lots of diseases that are not curable, but we can manage very successfully.
So then are there degrees of having pH?
Yeah, if you look to the whole population of people with pulmonary hypertension, there are those that are affected quite dramatically and are really impacted with the condition. Often there are groups of people who have pulmonary hypertension and have other conditions which are part of the symptoms that they experience as well. So yeah, it goes from a very mild form of the condition and affects people very mildly to really severe.
The pH Association, in its present form, how long has it been here?
We've been around, we've just celebrated our 10th anniversary, our 10th birthday this year.
And so why did it begin?
It began because there was a need 10, 11 years ago. It was a need for sort of general peer support, you know, sort of this individual is going through the same situation as you. So we had medicine and specialist nurses at some of the centres, but it's not the same as being able to speak to somebody with the condition. That's what we wanted. So it was really a peer support group that we were looking at.
I've heard some people tell me, and some people have said, when they finally connected with the pH Association, they felt that they were with a group of people who understood.
Yeah, it's a community. It's a community where there's a commonality. The language is the same. You don't have to explain from start to finish what it's like, what it was like when going through a diagnosis, all that frustration, what it's like trying to explain this condition to family, to employers, to the teachers at school, those sorts of things. It's a common language and it's a community.
So apart from the togetherness, the family feel of the PHA, there must also be an educational twist to it?
There is. I mean, there's two educational sides to it. One is for people with the condition, the family, etc. But also a very important part of our job over the last 10 years, and I think where we've been successful again, is raising the awareness of this condition amongst healthcare professionals.
So how do you do that?
A number of ways. One of the very successful ways is that we 2-3 times a year will attend medical conferences where you've got lots of doctors who work in respiratory medicine, so breathing problems, and go to their conferences and have a stand there where we've got information. We have people from the association who can share the information, talk about the condition and raising the awareness. And it's been really interesting over the years to see the amount of response that we get at places like that.
Because it's a little bit weird to think that you'd go to a conference and say to a doctor, listen, doc, do you know about pH?
It may sound weird, but that's the reality. And I think it's encouraging that, you know, a lot of these healthcare professionals want to learn, want to know. So yeah, it may be weird, but that's the reality.
The Great Ormond Street Hospital, is that the hub of pH research in this country?
No, where Great Ormond Street fits into the picture of pH is Great Ormond Street is the centre that manages and cares, develops treatments for children with pulmonary hypertension. What we have throughout the UK are 8 other specialist centres where there is shared research and collaborative work together. One
of the other things that the PH Association does, it has get-togethers. You've got your annual conference, but there's also your fun weekends. How important is that?
They're very important for a number of reasons. One, for the people that attend it, the family weekend, which is primarily for families who have a child with pulmonary hypertension. Very important. It's an opportunity to get together. It's an opportunity for the families to learn the very practicalities of going away for 3 or 4 days at a time, because you know, children with pulmonary hypertension require oxygen, and it's the logistics of getting and can we do it. And sometimes it's just the financial ability to get away as a family. So it's lots of things, and the family weekend is a fun weekend. The other conference that we have in an annual conference is more for sort of grown-ups with the condition. Tends to be more of an educational thing, bringing people up to date with recent research, new treatments, that type of thing. But it's also a large part, I would say 75–80% is about fun.
I've spent a little time in your office with the team here, and it's all business and everyone doing what they do, but then you hear the news that someone has died. And then things change. All of a sudden, it looks like you're dealing with a group of people, even within the office, that are emotionally connected, personally related.
It's true. I mean, you know, this is a serious condition, and sometimes, and I think 10 years as an organisation, you can sometimes just forget the impact of this condition. The people that we're helping and we're working with have a life-threatening, life-shortening condition, and you can't have a community that's meaningful, that when you lose one, that it doesn't impact you. So yeah, it is, but that's part of the journey, that's part of the battle, really. It's part of the purpose. It does change the mood of things, but I think what it actually does as well is it helps us refocus and remember exactly what it is that we're about.
I can't even begin to think how a family must feel after having battled with it for some time, that their child dies.
I don't know. Every individual, every family will be different. But we're not an organisation that tells everybody the future's always going to be rosy. So it's about preparing for that. But again, in a community, it's like a family. You know, you still lose and you still grieve. You still, you know, there's a bereavement period, but there is a future to keep fighting for. And it's amazing in a disease like this and through an organisation like this how willing people are to do things for others as well. So go through the bereavement themselves, but then to form part of a network that will support other people who may go through that again.
So you talk about there is a future. Picture it for me.
But it is a condition that we will be able to manage and care for, very similar to conditions like perhaps diabetes, which is life-threatening if it's untreated, if it's not managed properly, but where there is high quality, longevity, and where people don't feel isolated, where we've got a network of support, where people understand a diagnosis of pulmonary hypertension is serious.
From today to that point where that becomes reality, is it just time and money and research that's going to make the difference?
I think the first thing is it's a desire to make a difference. The money, the time, etc. comes after that, but what we need are people, professionals, non-professionals, supporters of our organisation, people who work in our office, etc., being committed. Everything else flows from that.
Iain, take me back to the beginning of the organisation. When did you first become involved and why?
Very first came involved about 11 years ago when it was first suggested we needed this network of peer support. And it was going to be a list of telephone numbers of people throughout the country supporting each other. I remember the very first meeting that we had as an organisation was at a hospital in London, at the Royal Free. And there was, I think there was 6 of us in there, that office. There was myself, there was a colleague of mine who worked at the Royal Free. We were so small, I had to pay for the train tickets for 2 of the people who were coming. One was a patient, the other was his partner, because we didn't have any resources. And there was no way that we sat in that room thinking that we would be where we're at today, which is, I think I'm right in saying, is about 3,000 members, a medical membership of around 500. And continuing to grow, and the things that we are and the difference that we're making. I can remember it well. It was run from the front room of Kay Hewitt, who's our secretary of the PHA. She'd been involved in it right from the beginning. Then it grew to temporary offices to where we are at the moment, where we're speaking from.
So can you remember when you became incorporated, when you became a charity?
I can remember it was in year 2000, so it stands out in the new millennium, and registering with the Charities Commission. Not really sure what a charity was going to be. Thought it was fairly straightforward, you know, you just want to do a good thing.
Have there been many battles?
Battles, yeah. There's been battles, some of them unpleasant, some of them we needed to fight. We're dealing with people, and people are difficult things to sort of deal with sometimes. And, you know, we're dealing with a serious condition. As an organisation, we've had battles to ensure that our members get access to the right healthcare resources that are available. Some 5 years into our existence, we had a big battle with something called the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, which looks at expensive drug therapies that the NHS spends. And some of the drugs that have been developed were at risk. We're going to be withdrawn because of the cost. And that was a long drawn out battle, 2 to 3 years. It was a battle with the authorities. It was a battle with, that had a political dimension with the Department of Health. But it was a battle that drew a lot of people together, patients, professionals, politicians even.
So you've won that battle?
We won that battle.
But what about the war?
Oh, the war continues. It'll continue because there are new treatments coming online all the time. There will always be expensive treatments because it's a small disease area. And we will always have to ensure that our members, people who are affected by this condition, have access to the best care possible.
You've been involved for over 10 years. So my question is, why are you involved?
It might sound a bit twee, this is because of the people, be them members, be them healthcare professionals, the people that work in the office that make it happen. We make a difference, and the good people.
Is it important as an organisation that you grow numerically?
It is. If we need to mobilise politically, write letters to MPs, the size of our membership has an influence there because people that make decisions are affected and make decisions based on the public voice. So yeah, it is important.
So are you getting good political help?
We have, and we have in the past, and it's something that we continue to work on. It is strange in this country. One of the problems that we have because of our electoral system is things change every 3-4 years. So that you put into place, you know, that group that you've got in place once can change quite dramatically. And it's something that requires our time and resources, and something that is important as part of our activities. It's not exclusively there, but it's important.
So someone watching this documentary, they may have been involved with PH on the skirts of it. Mm-hmm. Why would you encourage them to join up and be a part?
Because their experience really matters, and their voice really matters, and it can and does make a difference. There's a benefit for themselves, but I think probably a more motivating factor is there's a benefit for the future as well. So it's a win-win situation, really.
Iain, you've done a wonderful job with the PHA. The PHA is doing a wonderful job. Thanks for chatting.
Thank you very much.